On me. Could wreck everything. Give her a chance to lie or paint me as jealous, so I chose silent observation instead. For days I watched the small signals. How she spoke on the phone, what messages arrived, when she left and came back. I hated being that guy, a detective in my own home, but I couldn't shake the sticky sense that something dirty was going on. And the worst part was the ring on my finger, glittering with the words, "Only you forever," gifted by the one who might be betraying me. In one overheard phone call, she spoke softly but with a strange excitement. "No, I can't. Just give me a couple of days." "Yeah, understand." I walked into the room as if by accident, and she cut the call off instantly. "Okay, I'll call you back." And then she hung up. When I asked who it was, she waved a hand. "Work? I just wanted to check something about the reports." "What kind of office asks about reports that late?" "It was after 9, I said, feigning casual interest. "Well, odd hours. It's complicated. Nothing important." She tried to sound calm but seemed rattled. My heart grew heavier and heavier. Still, I stuck to silence. I wanted a moment when things would be clear without room for misinterpretation. That moment arrived faster than I expected. About a week after the anniversary, I had a fairly free day. By lunchtime, I'd finished my chores and decided to surprise Jessica by picking her up from the gym and taking her out to dinner. I wanted to see her trainer with my own eyes and get a feel for the place. And honestly, I hoped I was being paranoid and would laugh at myself. I arrived at the gym around 6 in the evening. It sits in a strip of shops. Inside, the ceilings were high and glass walls revealed the treadmills and weight area. At the reception sat a woman in her 30s I'd seen before. She smiled. "Hello. Can I help you?" "Hi." "Yes." I smiled back. "I'm looking for my wife. She's training here." "Jessica." "Oh yeah. I think she's still inside." The receptionist nodded. I moved toward the glass doors and waited in the lobby, pretending to be bored. Then a man in his 30s, tall, broad-shouldered, stopped nearby. He had that kind of face people often tag as narcissistic. I recognized him as a trainer by his uniform with the gym's emblem. He was on the phone, talking loudly. "Yeah, sure. I'm free after 7. "Well, not really, but I'll make an exception for you." "Don't worry, we'll make it." My eyes drifted to his hands, and a silver flash on his ring finger caught me. It was a thin ring with an engraving. I froze. It took a few seconds for me to realize the engraving looked terrifyingly familiar. "Only you." I was stunned. No way. Logic whispered that coincidences are rare. My insides turned to ice. My heart seemed to slow to a whisper while a drum pounded in my head. Two possibilities spun through me. Either this was a bizarre coincidence, or it proved he wore the same ring my wife had given me. I forced my breathing steady. From where I stood, I couldn't read the full inscription. It was on his inner band, but I could make out the "Only You" in the same style. What the hell? My hands trembled, but I pulled myself together and pretended I was only interested in the fitness programs. I walked up and smiled politely. "Hi, are you a strength coach by any chance?" "I'm Eric. I was wondering about the programs." He got off the phone and shot me a flirtatious look. "Yeah, I'm Chad, senior instructor. How can I help?" I shuffled awkwardly and glanced at his hand. "That's a cool ring. Where'd you get it?" Chad froze a beat, then grinned. "Oh, it was a gift from a friend," he chuckled, clearly pleased. I was shaking inside but kept it down. "Aha. It's very similar to something I got a while back. Something with writing too. Mind if I see it?" Chad slipped the ring off and held it up like a trophy. The letters on the inner band were identical. "Only You Forever." The room narrowed to a pinpoint. My throat tightened, but I forced a composed appreciation. "Beautiful." "Yeah, I like it," he replied with a swagger, as if showing off. Memories slammed into me. Me at home placing that ring on my finger, reading the sweet inscription, feeling touched. And now this man, likely my wife's lover, wearing the same piece. It felt less like a delusion and more like a bitter fact. I pretended everything was fine and handed the ring back. "Cool. Okay, I'll think about the class." "Thanks." He slid the ring on and walked toward the equipment. I stood there barely aware of the conversations around me, my heart thudding like I might explode and scream. But I didn't. I needed to see Jessica and look her in the eyes. Maybe it was some cruel prank. A few minutes later, she emerged from the locker room, hair a bit messy, gym bag over her shoulder. When she spotted me, she flinched. Surprise and something like fear flickered across her face. I approached with a smile. "Hey, thought I'd pick you up. How about dinner?" "Oh, hi." She scanned the gym as if terrified Chad might spot us. "Well, this is unexpected, Eric. I was actually on my way home." "Perfect. Let's go." I got off early. She noticed my tension and her smile froze into something forced. "Yeah, sure. Let's go." As we moved toward the exit, I caught Chad glance our way. His face was hard, but the corner of his mouth curled in a mocking way. I clenched my fists but stayed silent, needing time to process. We drove home in a heavy quiet. Near our place, I tried to sound casual. "Jessica, where did you get the engraving done for my ring? I might order one for a friend." She tensed. At a workshop downtown." "Why the sudden interest?" "No reason." "A workshop? What's the name?" "Golden Craft, I think." She tried to hold it together, but panic seeped into her voice. I didn't push. I merely nodded. That evening I wandered around in a sulk, emotions coiled ready to snap if she said the wrong thing. But I held back. I needed hard facts, not excuses. The next day, I tracked down that workshop. It accepted online orders. You send a sketch, pay, and they engrave rings. I called and said I was interested in a recent order, perhaps to make another of the same kind, and gave an approximate date. The clerk asked for a last name. I gave Jessica's. She looked it up and said, "Yes, we had an order for 2 engraved rings, only you forever." "It was your wife who designed them." "2 rings?" I asked, trying to hide the tremor in my voice. "Yes, 2 men's sizes, I think. One is a little smaller than the other, but both are for men." I forced steady breaths. "Okay, thank you." So it wasn't just a similar ring, it was the exact same ring, and she'd ordered 2, planning to give the same intimate message to another man. Nausea rose in my throat, anger, humiliation, pain churned inside me, but I didn't want to make a scandal over the phone. You won't believe what began as a perfect anniversary surprise and spiraled into the worst betrayal of my life. Hello everyone, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and let's get into it. I'm Eric, 38, living just outside Chicago in Illinois. By the time I hit 40, I'd gathered what felt like a lifetime of lessons. Yet I never expected the sharpest one to arrive when I least suspected it. Until very recently, I thought I had everything. A loving wife, a house in a quiet neighborhood with a tidy lawn, and a morning routine that always started with a jog. But here's the twist. Sometimes outward perfection masks alarm bells that are already ringing underneath. It all began with our 8th wedding anniversary. It wasn't a huge milestone to others, but it's always been meaningful to me. I'm a stickler for details. If we mark 8 years, I want that evening to show I love her as much as I did on day 1. Little rituals matter to me. Jessica usually kept track of these dates too, but this year she surprised me by taking over everything and saying, "I want to surprise you." Her voice was so sure it made me smile. On the anniversary, I came home a bit early from work. From the doorstep, the warm scent of candles hit me. Soft florals tangled with spices. Someone had set a small table in the living room with strawberries, a bottle of champagne, and 2 flutes. Jessica was wearing a deep wine-colored dress and bright lipstick. I hadn't seen her like that in ages. She smiled, but there was a tension in her eyes, like she'd practiced every line. When I moved closer, she hugged me, but the hug felt a little mechanical. Maybe I imagined it, but my heart did skip for a moment. "Happy anniversary, honey," she said. And there was that particular note people use when they're trying to hide inner turmoil. I smiled and said, "Wow, what a surprise. You even set up a table." "I was counting on us going out," I replied. "Why go out when we can be romantic right here?" she said, taking my hand and guiding me to the couch. "Sit down. I've prepared something." I sat and she slipped into the bedroom for a moment, coming back with a small gift box. My chest pounded like a child on Christmas morning. I wasn't expecting anything extravagant, but her effort warmed me. "This is for you," she said, offering the box. "Open it." I lifted the lid and found a thin white gold ring inside. Elegant, plain, no gems. Most striking was the engraving inside. "Only you forever." The words felt tender and almost childlike in their simplicity. "Only you forever." A lump rose in my throat. I could have called it over the top, but I loved her. I was proud we were together, and I was glad to wear it. I picked the ring up gently and slid it onto my finger. God, Jessica, I don't even have words. Thank you, I mumbled. Did you have it engraved on purpose? Yeah, I found a good place. I've been wanting to do something personal for you for a long time, she said, but there was a flicker of confusion in her eyes. She almost looked away when I met her gaze. It's really amazing, seriously, I continued, trying not to highlight her odd expression. I never imagined this. You surprised me. She fell silent, and the pause stretched. The longer it lasted, the louder my doubts grew. My subconscious was yelling, look at her, she's tense like someone reciting lines. Still, I scolded myself. Don't invent problems. Maybe she was simply thrilled to have pulled off a surprise. We clinked our champagne glasses and she took a sip, though even that small motion felt a touch staged. I didn't want to ruin the night, so I stuffed the tiny splinter of doubt down and focused on the good things. I told her I loved her, remembered how 8 years ago at the altar she looked like the happiest woman alive. She smiled, hugged me, kissed me, but it all felt automatic. I swallowed my unease, thinking perhaps work stress was clouding her. The rest of the evening passed without incident, except for that odd atmosphere. She said she wanted to turn in early, exhausted from preparing the surprise. In bed I tried to hug and kiss her. She responded, but without real passion, as if going through a formality, and we fell asleep. Had I known then that this small gift would become the first brick of my personal hell, maybe I would have pretended to forget the anniversary. A couple of days later, I was working from home. I'm in computer technology and can often handle tasks remotely when there are no urgent meetings. Jessica had always gone to the gym in the evenings and did yoga or ran on weekends. She's in great shape and I'd always been proud of her. But suddenly her gym nights increased. She'd tell me, I'll be late, I've got an extra workout, or we have a group class tonight. At first it seemed normal, exercise is healthy, but she started coming back distant more often. Her answers grew monosyllabic. When I asked, how was it? How's the trainer? She'd get flustered or change the subject abruptly, like that topic stressed her. On about the 4th day after the anniversary, I was finishing a project in my home office when I heard her in the living room on the phone. No, he doesn't know anything. Yes, of course. Only fragments reached me. Then she noticed me and snapped the call shut. I pretended I hadn't heard, but my skin went cold. He doesn't know anything. That phrase unlocked the darkest possibilities in my head. I tried to reason it away. Maybe she was planning another surprise, but we'd already had the surprise and it didn't fit. The next day when I asked if she'd be late, she brushed it off. It's fine. I might stay another 30 minutes at the gym. Don't worry, okay? Her eyes skirted away like she couldn't meet me. Anxiety built up like a snowball. We used to talk about everything, but now she retreated into shadows whenever I pushed. I knew asking straight out, "Are you cheating?" I knew I had to wait until she went to the gym. It was the only way to catch them red-handed. I needed proof, not guesses. At least now I was certain her trainer was involved and that she'd ordered the same "Only You Forever" for him too. The irony burned. That night at home I asked calmly, "When are you going to the gym?" She shot me a quick look. "Tomorrow." "Why?" I said. "Just wondering if I could give you a ride." "No, that's fine. I can drive myself," she said a touch sharper than she intended, then forced a strange smile. "I'll go in the afternoon. You've got work." I understood. That night I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned as images replayed. Her handing me that ring with smiling eyes that now felt full of lies, and her ordering a second one for that cocky, muscle-bound coach. The thoughts were a whip in my head. I pictured barging into the gym and slugging that fitness king with a dumbbell, but a small sliver of hope clung on. Maybe I'd misread things. Logic, however, shouted the truth. The next day, she said she'd go at 5. I called in a favor and took an early day off work, watched her leave, and trailed her car. The gym's lot was mostly empty. I parked out of sight and approached the entrance, peering through the glass. For a moment I considered storming in, but I worried he'd slip away. I wanted something undeniable. About 30 minutes later, they stepped out together. She still wore her tights and tee. He was in uniform but without his badge. They looked around, saw no one. and strolled to a car parked a short distance away. He slipped an arm around her waist and she didn't pull away. A hellish mix of jealousy and fury struck me, but I stayed hidden and watched. They climbed into his black Mustang, he in the driver's seat, she in the passenger, and a heartbeat later they were kissing like the world didn't exist. Something inside me snapped. My hands clenched on their own. There was no doubt, she wasn't just exercising, she was cheating, and she'd given him the same ring. Had she even thought about me? Did she care at all? I could no longer stand by. I stepped forward toward the car. She looked up and froze, horror widening her eyes. The coach turned and saw me too, a bead of confusion crossing his face. I rapped my knuckles sharply on the driver's window. The sound cut through the air. Chad tried to keep his swagger but lowered the glass. "Hey man, what do you want?" he snarled. I stared at him, then shifted to Jessica. She sat pale and terrified. The driver's door was unlocked. I opened it, grabbed Chad by the collar, and hauled him out. He shoved back, but the fury I'd held in for days made me strong. I slapped him across the cheek and he reeled, cursing. "Are you out of your mind? Who the do you think you are?" I wasn't interested in talk. I heard Jessica cry, "Stop! Stop!" But my patience had vanished. I struck again, this time to the stomach. He doubled over, tried to push at me weakly, and I intercepted his arm. "You think you can mess with me?" I hissed. Chad, finally seeing I was serious, backed off, his face a blend of fear and disbelief. The alpha male unmasked. I watched the ring sparkle on his finger and jabbed. "Wear that. It suits you. You're officially the lover of a married woman. Mark yourself." He gasped and spat invectives, but I cut him off and refused any explanations. "Don't you ever go near my wife," I warned. Turning back to Jessica, I found her trembling, shame and panic written all over her. There was nowhere left to hide. The truth had come out. "Get out of the car," I said, "or you can go with him to the ends of the earth and don't come back." She flinched under my stare, then climbed out, glancing at Chad, who clutched his side and circled me with reluctance. "What the hell are you doing, Jessica?" I demanded. "For a cheap thrill? For adrenaline? Or is he messing with your head?" She mouthed something incoherent. "I didn't mean to. Eric, I'm sorry." "I'm sorry," she said, voice trembling. I answered bitterly, "No, it's over." I didn't want a public scene to drag on, so I walked to my car as she begged me to wait and talk. I drove off, leaving her in that humiliating moment so she could deal with the consequences. At home I sank onto the couch and pressed my head in my hands. Rage, humiliation, disgust, and a strange sense of release swirled inside me. The bottom line was indisputable. She had betrayed me. I remembered our wedding vows, the ring we exchanged, the promise "only you forever," and how she'd handed the same phrase to someone else. The thought made me shudder. About 40 minutes later the front door opened and she entered, pale and tear-streaked, dropping her bag and rushing toward me. "Eric, please, listen. It was a mistake. I don't know what came over me," she cried. Cold fury swept over me. A mistake. Hitting a wrong key is a mistake. Ordering 2 rings engraved "Only You Forever," putting one on your husband and giving the other to your boyfriend, that's not a mistake. That's a deliberate betrayal. No, it was. I didn't mean it. It's all so weird. We just got close. I was confused. I thought our relationship was getting boring. He gave me feelings. She broke down, but I had no appetite for excuses. I stood up, teeth clenched. "You thought I'd never find out, didn't you? What was the point of those engravings? To lie to me and him at the same time?" The idea of them laughing behind my back made my stomach twist. "No, we weren't laughing. I don't know. It's my fault. I'm sorry. I'd do anything to keep you," she sobbed. "Honestly, it was only a couple times. Well, maybe a little more." I snorted. "I don't care if it was 10 times. That's it. It's over, Jessica." She grabbed my arm. "Wait, please. You can't just ruin everything. We've been together 8 years." I wrenched free. "You ruined it, Jessica. I'm not taking this." I walked into the bedroom, yanked her suitcase from the closet, tossed it onto the bed, and shoved her things into it with sharp mechanical movements. She stood, in the doorway sobbing, begging, promising to fix things. I continued. My resolve had hardened into iron. I would move forward without her. I refused to beg or be humiliated. Better to be alone than live under a cloud of constant suspicion. After stuffing the final items into the suitcase, I hauled it to the front door, dragged it outside, and carried more of her bags to the porch. She followed, crying that she hadn't meant it. It was on impulse. I faced her, holding back my anger but speaking almost calmly. Your love is as cheap as your ring. Give it to whoever you want. I don't need it. Good luck. Tears streamed down her face, but I stayed cold. She dropped to her knees. Eric, I beg you. At least let me explain. I stepped back into the house and slammed the door in her face. That was the end. My hand trembled, but I breathed until it steadied. Did it help? Partly. At least I'd made a point and refused to look pathetic. I had removed her from my life the way she'd thrown away my trust. Months passed. The divorce was grueling, filled with paperwork and formalities. Jessica called and sent tearful messages. I didn't answer. I lost weight, but gradually I began to recover. I stayed in our house. A few neighbors guessed something had happened, but I never explained. I started spending more time at the gym, oddly therapeutic, but I chose a different center, one far from where Chad worked. Working out let me channel my anger into something tangible. When the storm finally eased, I couldn't even look at the ring she'd given me. One day I took it off, stared at the engraving, "Only you forever," and felt only the bitter taste of a beautiful lie. I tossed the ring into a box and shut it away, as if sealing the past. About 6 months after the breakup, I met a woman named Rachel. It wasn't an instant spark, but I felt comfortable with her from the start. We crossed paths at an IT conference where I'd been invited as a speaker, and she represented her company. At first it was professional chatter, then it turned into genuine conversation. She smiled in a way that had no shadow of falseness. We began dating, and slowly the fear of being cheated on loosened its grip. Maybe I wasn't ready to dive headfirst into a new commitment, but with Rachel something felt different. One night I told her, in broad strokes, what had happened with my ex. I expected caution, but Rachel only held me and didn't recoil. In that quiet hug I felt the old pain begin to drain away. I realized life didn't end because someone betrayed you. Yes, I'd been taught a hard lesson, but I learned I deserved honesty. Months later we were seeing each other regularly. Concerts, cozy dinners, laughter and plans for the future. Beside her I found myself joking again, talking about what comes next. At some point I felt the urge to wear a ring once more. Not the one Jessica had given me, but a new ring that would actually mean something. I didn't rush into buying one. I wanted to be certain. But the idea that I might someday trust someone enough to say, "Only you forever," no longer seemed impossible. One evening I realized I hadn't replayed the affair in my head all day. Anger hadn't gnawed at me. That's when I knew I had let go. I cleared the house of meaningless reminders of Jessica. The divorce was settled, property divided, and I felt stronger for it. Her betrayal had cut deep, but my life had been renewed. A scar remained, but I'd learned that when trust is broken you can't rebuild on ruins. It's better to shut one door and open another. Time heals, and it hardens character if you refuse to be a pushover. Now I stand on the threshold of plans with Rachel, thinking about a ring that would genuinely symbolize something real. Looking in the mirror I don't see a victim, but a man who turned the tide. I refused to let my wife kick me out of my own life, and I didn't become a doormat. She chased cheap thrills. I closed the door. There was no room for self-pity. I let go of Jessica, her illusions of new emotions, and that symbolic "only you forever" she'd handed out twice. Now the engraving only makes me give a bitter chuckle and remember that love is not an inscription or loud promises. Love is action. If someone says, "Only you forever," and then cheats, all the romance becomes a cheap fake overnight. When people ask how I am after the divorce, I tell them plainly, I'm doing great. I'm free from deception and from false loyalty masked as a precious gift. I'm rebuilding from scratch. Fewer illusions, more sincerity. Someday I might buy a ring again, a real one without the lies attached. Because I know the right man won't drag a third person into a story meant for two. Maybe one sunny day I'll get down on one knee in front of Rachel, open a velvet box, and quietly say, "Only you forever." There will be no second ring for anyone else. there will be one for the one and only. So ends my story of pain, fury, betrayal, and ultimately renewed hope. I wasn't looking for sympathy. I chose to be honest with myself and end a relationship that had destroyed trust. Life handed me a chance to start over, and I took it, believing this time things would be different. That's where today's story ends. Thank you for watching until the end. If you liked it, don't forget to like and comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts. See you in the next video.